You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast.
You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. My name is Sean Wilkie, and along with my awesome co host, we interview the innovators in this space every week. Ivan, please go ahead and kick us off.
Hey, I'm Ivan Zach. I'm excited to introduce our guest today, Dr. Jacob Adams. Dr. Jacob Adams is the Chief Scientific Officer at Noxsano, specializing in improved wound healing through topical delivery of endogenous molecules, including nitric oxide. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree in chemistry from Georgia Tech, where he researched self-assembling structure on polymer backbones, and a PhD from the University of Texas, Austin, focusing on deep UV transparent molecules for microelectronics. Dr. Adams has extensive experience in microelectronics research and product development in fast-moving consumer goods and has co-authored over 20 peer-reviewed journals, articles, and patents. Dr. Jacob Adams, welcome to the show. That was very difficult to read. so,
My apologies. Thanks for having me and for persevering through that.
so let's talk about microelectronics. All right. So tell us.
I'm proud of you, Ivan. Good work. That was great.
Let's talk about Noxsano. What is it, and what are you trying to accomplish here?
So Noxsano was founded to improve wound healing was our goal. It started out on the human side. We had a colleague who had a diabetic foot ulcer, and we got interested in why diabetic foot ulcers specifically don't heal, or at least are reluctant to heal in many cases. And there's some really great work from about 30 years ago in the early 90s with physicians placing nitric oxide as a topical additive to wound treatment onto diabetic foot ulcers and showing that they would close. And so we thought, well, why isn't this widely practiced through medicine and specifically in veterinary medicine? And as we dug into it, we saw that just the delivery system was challenging. The molecule's a gas. So, how can we get it to veterinarians in a more efficient manner?
That makes a ton of sense. So, how did this all come together? What's the origin story? How did you get involved? Have you been involved from the beginning? And yeah, let's start there.
Yes. So the background, which I thought Ivan did a great job working his way through, is all about how chemistry is activated remotely. And so, what can you do to deliver a system into a user's hands such that it works in practice without consuming the material in the packaging? And so, how can you put an active component into a product? And so, what we've done here is take a dry powder formulation and create it such that when you add water, it produces nitric oxide. And that will produce nitric oxide for up to a week as long as it stays wet. And so we've taken a very difficult to deliver molecule out of the gaseous species and put it into an aqueous solution effectively so it can be applied directly as a primary dressing.
So, going kind of back to it, you personally, I understand well, I don't understand. I hear the chemistry that you're describing behind, but how your journey evolving from the engineer and microelectronics specialist ended up thinking about the pets and how their wounds are healing.
Yeah, how did this company start? Like, this is very interesting.
So I had a career transition that you picked up on the fast moving consumer goods there after the microelectronics area. I got interested in how would you take activated chemistries and apply them to other areas. The CEO of our company was working at the time at Procter and Gamble, a fast moving consumer goods company. And he was very interested in how do we formulate active components into otherwise inert materials so that they can sit on the shelf and be sold as consumer goods. And so you want to put a precursor material into a package and then have it activated at the point of use. And so what we do with the product, and the reason we got into this is while we were working together, we had a coworker who had a diabetic foot ulcer. He was a very active guy, hiking, biking, kayaking, all of this. He didn't come into work one day, which is very unlike him. And when we got in touch with him, he was in the hospital looking at having an amputation.
Holy shit.
Yeah, a pretty wild thing. He was a type 1 diabetic. He'd been managing it successfully for over 50 years. He'd been diagnosed at age 4 and was in his late 50s at this time. And so this was a real eye-opening moment to us. Like, how could an otherwise apparently healthy individual, we knew he had diabetes, but he looked healthy to us, suddenly not be at work because he might be getting an amputation? And really what it comes down to is poor blood flow. So diabetics suffer from neuropathy. And when they get an open ulcer on a foot or an extremity, there's insufficient blood flow to bring the necessarily healing factors, growth factors, cytokines, white blood cells into the area. And there was really this great innovation in medicine in the early 90s that showed that delivering nitric oxide, which is a gas, and it's the breakdown product, the amino acid arginine, can generate both blood flow and tissue growth in wounds. The most well known example in medicine of using nitric oxide is if you're familiar with premature babies, they'll put them into a chamber. And in that chamber, they'll pump nitric oxide gas. As they breathe that helps them build lung tissue so they can breathe on their own. And so this is a very powerful molecule that you can imagine trying to deliver a gas to a wound is quite a challenge.
Yeah. And so you've got a lay of the land. We've got three people working together. At least one of them calls in sick. They're going to lose their leg. Okay. There's an idea that gets formed. Now what happens?
Well, it kind of sat dormant for some period of time. We looked into it, got curious about nitric oxide, couldn't figure out exactly how to make that work. And then, unfortunately, unrelated, our colleague ultimately passed away. And so after he passed away, we kind of got together and we're talking about it. This idea kept coming up like, how can we help people like JC? Can we do something that will alleviate the suffering here? And so we took our background of activated chemistries and said, well, we know nitric oxide works, but it's not widely used. In the example where you put a baby into a chamber and allow them to breathe, that hypothetically will work on a diabetic foot ulcer. And so, but you can imagine the difficulty of saying, we're going to take you, full size adult person, put you into a chamber, and we're going to keep you there for multiple days, possibly weeks. And so the question just germinated with us of like, how would you deliver this in an easy to use form? And we did what scientists often do. We went to the literature and said, has anybody else done this? And the short answer and the good answer for us is yes. Lots of people have delivered nitric oxide to wounds, and they've done it in a number of manners. But it was either really ridiculously expensive or complex or had some significant side effects, such as burns on the skin, depending on how they were delivering the system.
That's super cool. Then what? So you have an idea. You have three scientists.
I feel like that's our only question. And then what?
And then, because I love, there was I think it was a professor from MIT, and he was in this Russian forum in St. Petersburg, and he described why Soviet Union, even though it had a lot of inventions, never really pushed a lot of products out of the market. And he said the difference between invention and innovation is that invention needs to be commercialized to become an innovation. So what's that journey like from you having the aha moment, searching, the articles and then saying, okay, this could be a product, this could be a vet product, and let's build a company, spend a bunch of money, risk everything that we have to get there?
That's a great question. And so the first thing we did is not spend a lot of money. We started with a very, very small amount of money. And we went to where any good science usually takes place, a garage and a driveway. And so the first thing we did was we got an electrochemistry kit from Amazon.
As one does.
Shout out for Jeff Bezos here.
Yeah, went to the Kroger, the grocery store around the corner, and picked up sodium nitrite, which is known as meat tenderizer. We put those together into an electrochemical cell, which we use PVC pipe for. And with a little plumber's putty, PVC pipe, and the ingredients I described, we created an electrochemical cell that could produce nitric oxide on the driveway of my colleague's home. The cool part about driveway, if you're ever wondering and you have something you want to know if it's antimicrobial, if a driveway has been installed for a number of years in most climates, if you look down, that kind of grayish, browny, blacky kind of look you see, that's almost guaranteed to be a biofilm. There's probably some other debris there, but you'll have living organisms there. And so if you want to test if you've produced an antimicrobial, a driveway is a wonderful place to try it out. And so we put together this electrochemical cell on the driveway. And a couple hours later, we picked it up, cleaned it up, and there was a nice clean circle where the PVC pipe had been. And we thought, I think we're onto something. And so we then decided, okay, well, let's see if this has been done before. And it was not readily apparent, at least in that manner, somebody had produced nitric oxide. So that's when we started spending a little bit more money. We created an IP strategy and patented the technology. And then we looked at more efficient ways of producing nitric oxide rather than the electrochemistry set. And we started where we made a what looked like a gauze pad that contained sodium nitrite. And we actually installed a battery into that gauze pad and drove a current that would reduce that and produce nitric oxide. As we developed the technology, we realized that there were significantly better ways to do it than just putting a battery in there that would reduce pressure points and generate the nitric oxide a little bit more efficiently. And so we created a gauze pad effectively that would generate nitric oxide when it was wetted.
This is so
That's
crazy.
crazy.
Yeah, so
You know,
cool.
Could you use the same driveway for the first product launch and like a lemonade stand that you could just sell the piping in electrochemistry? That's awesome. That's just such an
We're gonna run out of time, and I got so many questions. So, where are you guys at today? So, you obviously have a product, you have a company, do you have customers? Like, what's the status?
We do. We're absolutely thrilled. So we launched our product in the beginning of 2023. We now have over 400 veterinary clinics and zoos around the country that are using the product. We have completed two clinical, or rather, I should say, independent clinical trials have been done with our product. One was done at Colorado State, led by doctors Kristen Zers and Sarah Marvel and Katrina McPhail, which showed really great results and demonstrated that the product could be used through all phases of wound healing. We had another clinical trial that was performed at the University of Georgia. That was a surgical incisional trial that showed we reduced wound healing times by about 40% compared to their standard of care.
Whoa.
And so we're absolutely thrilled by that because we want to lower the burden on the pet for the healing of the wound. We want to lower the burden on the owner for the stress and the money that it takes to heal that wound. And we really want to lower the burden of the work that is performed in the clinic on managing these wounds.
That's amazing. So, what's the use case? I mean, wounds, obviously, but is there a specific like type of wound or a specific is a companion animal? Like, tell us more about who your ideal customer is and what the ideal use cases are for the product.
The really great part about generating nitric oxide is that it is a natural breakdown product in wounds. So, if you want to think about this, we're effectively supplementing what occurs naturally in a healthy wound. And that's how we accelerate that healing time. So, we started out on humans. And I like to say when I speak to vets that we know it's safe for animals because we tested on humans. And
That's perfect. That's perfect. More of that should be done.
that's how most research in veterinary medicine done. We'd taken the lab, we tested on humans, and then we switched to veterinary.
yes, that's wonderful. And so it turns out because we all have very similar biology, it's the breakdown product, the amino acid arginine. It's useful in companion animals, equine, and exotics. In fact, really, we've seen some great results on birds. And Ivan, I know that may not be your favorite species to treat, but I think we've made it easy enough to treat birds that you might want to do some of that.
I have chickens at home.
It sounds like he might have listened to
I
some
know.
episodes, Ivan.
Yeah, actually, I was absolutely delighted by this because my kids love the zoo, and so the ability to treat exotic animals really got me a lot of credibility as a dad. But one of the really coolest use cases was there was a professor, York Meyer at the University of Georgia, who in his rounds was treating a chicken, and he sent me some photos of that. I was delighted because I didn't know people took their chicken to the animal hospital, and the results were fantastic. So that was thrilling. And so you asked about what the use cases are. Our probably most common use case right now are in traumatic wounds, whether those are from things like hit by car or bite wounds. But we're seeing a real uptick in things like surgically created wounds, so incisions and things that are being closed with grafts and flaps.
It's amazing.
So, if I'm understanding correctly, you have both disinfecting as well as wound healing properties here. Am I understanding correctly?
Nitric oxide is a natural antimicrobial, and we do have a really great testimonial on our website. Dr. Wallace at the University of Georgia, who ran a clinical trial with this on the surgically created wounds, she subsequently used it in her practice on an animal that had a carbapenem-resistant E. coli infection. And so she was able to clear that infection without systemic antibiotics using the product topically. So that kind of result is really fantastic to see.
What does the product look like? Describe it to our audience that can't see.
So we have two product forms, and the best compliment I've gotten at a trade show was, "Well, this looks really easy or simple to use." And so what we have is what looks like a gauze pad. Inside of the gauze pad is a powder formulation, and that powder formulation is activated upon wetting. You'll see some swelling. A lot of the vets will call it a tea bag because it looks about like a tea bag. But we utilized components similar to what's in a disposable diaper. And so once you activate this, it'll feel a little bit like without the urine component, a used diaper. It swells up like that and is placed as a primary contact layer. We also have a gel that comes in a syringe. It gives a little bit more latitude on the sort of size of the wound, the shape of the wound, height, motion areas, complex geometries, and such. You can dispense that. And the great part about that is it's designed with some cohesiveness. So when you dispense that, that will stick onto surfaces very nicely. And that's designed to bioresorb over the course of about 3 to 4 days.
So cool. And 40% increase in healing time. Like that's massive.
Yes. And so we're absolutely thrilled. That results in a real world measurable reduction in the number of visits to a clinic, which obviously saves the pet parent a lot of time and money, and it saves the clinic work. And so we absolutely love those types of results.
It's like artificial leeches. People used to use those to increase the blood flow. So it's like, yeah, it's incredible.
So, what is the value prop for your customers? So, we've got lots of veterinary corporate groups. Everybody listens to this podcast. What's the value prop? Why are people like, yes, healing time, great for the pet parent, but what's the value prop for the veterinarians? How do they make money? Why would they want to use this?
Well, we think there's a couple things. One is we've made it very easy to do dressing changes. At least that's something that's been relayed to us by veterinary professionals, is that relative to some of the other treatments available, this is very easy to apply, very easy to change. So we're going to reduce the total amount of time it takes for each change. By reducing the number of changes, one, you drive client satisfaction way up. And then you also are able to get to more high value cases, right? If you're managing a case and all it is just bringing them in once or twice a week for bandage changes, there's not a large profit margin, at least as I understand it, in most veterinary clinics for a simple change. If you can manage that wound, get the animal healthy, obviously that's the real win, is you got a healthy animal. But then the big win on the back end is that opens up your resources in the veterinary clinic, the veterinarians and the techs, to move on to another case management where you can make some more money for the clinic.
Sounds like a great product for an industry that can't find enough people to do the work that needs to be done. That's pretty cool.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
Well, that's a fantastic story, but we're getting to the end of the show. There are two questions number one, there's three questions. Number one, where people can find you, those that are listening, how do they contact you, and just to try this and get into their practice?
Well, if you want to find out more information about our product, you can go to our website, noxsano.com. I love hearing from veterinary professionals, so feel free to email me. It's very simple. It's jacob@noxsano.com. Feel free to reach out. And our products are available through Covetrus, MWI, Midwest, and Patterson. So if you're looking to try out the products, please reach out, ask questions. We love to hear from you.
And that's Noxsano, the company spelling.
That is correct.
One of the regular two questions that we ask, is there a book, YouTube video, TED Talk, any inspiring information that you recently listened to, read, or watched that you would like to share with our listeners?
Yes, we're a bit after graduation season, but my go-to gift for the last, I'd say, 10 to 15 years for graduates in my family has been a book called A Short History of Nearly Everything by Bill Bryson. It's a really great way to just sit down and think, why is everything here? Why are things the way they are? And it inspires you to think about new problems. And a little Easter egg for anybody who chooses to go after that, I read it for the first time about 20 years ago and totally missed a portion in there where they talk about nitric oxide.
That's the best. So last question for you, Jacob. Another innovator in the veterinary field that you think we should have on our show?
There's a veterinarian by the name of Lisa Dodoni. She's formerly of the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo. She's left that now, and she is a giraffe specialist. She is doing some really amazing conservation work, and I had the good fortune to connect with her at VMX in 2023 and to see her give a presentation at the American Association of Zoo Veterinarians last year. Absolutely fantastic conservation work, fascinating speaker, and I highly recommend it. If you can support her organizations, we love what she's doing.
Thank you so much for listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. If you want to hear about our new episodes, please follow us on any social media channel. Also, you can check out our website at veterinaryinnovationpodcast.com. See you next week.